Of the week.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. I have another fantastic show for you planned out. It has been a very eventful day for me, so I really apologize about the timings and all of the flexibility that y'all are providing as well. Sean and Seb, thank you so much for being flexible today. We are going to be going into time. That's where we're going. And I have a fantastic quote that I want to get started with. But before I do any of that, I want to remind everybody to like the show, subscribe, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff so that we can get you get your little email every day that we go live, which is, of course, every day. Now, if you have any comments, thoughts, or questions, do put them up in the comment section so we can discuss them. And we are going to continually do our best. But my mug is packed right now, so I can't actually put it up. I would like to, but not going to happen. Now I'm going to start us off with a quote because we're going to continue our conversation about time. And I got this quote after our conversation yesterday. And it goes like this: "There is surely nothing other than the single purpose of the present moment. A man's whole life is a succession of moment after moment. There will be nothing else to do and nothing else to pursue. Live being true to the single purpose of the moment." And that is a quote from the Hagakure, the Book of the Samurai by Yamamoto Tsunetomo. I hope I got that right. So we had quite an interesting conversation on time yesterday, and we kind of went on a bit of a tangent on the concept of time. But I wanted to get so much more
Tangent?
granular.
That's such a strong word.
Okay, it wasn't quite a tangent, but it
was
was
no
a bit of
tangent.
an offshoot. we stayed on topic of time, but I wanted to make sure that we hit a little bit more granular in terms of time and peak performance, because that is what we're talking about throughout the week. So, what are you guys' thoughts on the moment, the single present moment? Seb, you go first.
Yeah, I think I was thinking of that yesterday as well after we finished an incredible conversation, and I realized that we stuck to mindset as it pertains to time, basically, right? But it's really interesting because when you look at all the things that we could be passing on as far as information or valuable information or even learning, anything as somebody listening, all of this is irrelevant if your mindset is not right. If you have the wrong mindset as it pertains to time, leadership, or any other things that you are learning, you're not hearing the things the way you should. You're not processing them the way you should, and therefore you're not getting as much out of the conversation as you would. And so I always like to start with that, with a sort of a bird's eye view of the topic, and as it pertains to mindset. And once you have that, then you can start kind of launching into the more intricate details of it, and it makes more sense right off the hop. So, time and in a present moment. How? Yes, it is critically important to live in the moment. We also know that if you are planning anything or if you have anything on your agenda, such as a mission statement, you also are aware that that's going to come down the line, which means that you have some degree of predictability on the future, which really is a fallacy. It's not real, but it helps you frame what you do in the moment. And so I do understand what the quote says from a realistic perspective. Obviously, there are going to be certain things that you are going to set for yourself that are in the future. And if we take the quote literally, then that's completely irrelevant. But it isn't. It's not completely irrelevant. It has some relevance. But we need to be able to keep that as a overarching goal, knowing full well that this may or may not be seen by us ever. It doesn't change anything at the end of the day. We're going to take the steps that we need to be successful in our pursuit. And if we don't get to see the pursuit on account of what life's plans are that we are perhaps unaware of, then so be it. What are you going to do? You're going to stop living, stop pushing, stop moving forward? No, you can't, right? And so for me, it's kind of the same as validating some of the emotions that I have, but overriding them with certain processes. It's exactly the same. You're validating your timestamp on the mission statement that you have to be in the future, understanding the future does not exist. But that's the only way that you can truly focus your energy where your energy needs to be in the present.
It's a tricky concept. Sean, what do you think?
That is the trick. That is the trick. I mean, I'm glad we started it off with mindset. Because if you don't have your mind right, you can read all of the stoic quotes in the world, and all you're doing is reading the English language, but you're not applying them with the correct mindset. In fact, I would go so far as to say a lot of the quotes out there are a distraction until you get your mindset right. Because what you're trying to do is interpret the world around you through someone else's perspective when you don't even have your own perspective yet. So you got to get right with yourself. You got to get right with the moment. You got to live in the now. And I think the word moment is the trip up, is the trip wire for some people. They focus on, I'm going to focus on the moment. Well, what does that moment mean to them? Is it the moment now that we're all existing in, sharing currently? Or is it the moment tomorrow when they've got to do their laundry? Or the moment when school opens up for their kids and it's the first big day of school? And right now, they're already in the future shopping for little Jenny's new school outfit. They're not in the moment. They're currently now existing in the shopping future, that moment. And so the moments that we're supposed to be focusing on is the now, not the moment that is in our very near future. That's the trick.
I'm picturing this as like, try to keep your eye on one piece of a river, right? Like it's almost impossible unless there's some sort of marker, something that you can.
It's called a fish.
Well, yeah, a fish, or you throw a stick at a river or something like that. You can kind of.
No,
track
that's gone. The
True,
leaf is gone.
Exactly.
The
That's what
fish
I mean.
can move in water. You can focus on the fish. The fish can swim upstream, it can swim downstream, it can swim towards you, it can swim away. The fish has mobility. That is the moment.
Yeah.
The fish is the moment if we're using the analogy of a river. It's your job to identify what the moment is. And that's where it goes wrong, because people can't identify the fish in the river. What's your fish, man? What are you supposed to be focusing on right now that's highly fluidized, is non-linear? You can't understand that fish, which way it's going to... It could go up or down. It could go 100 feet down in that river. It's your job to focus on the fish, not the river.
Interesting. Seb, you got any thoughts on the fish?
Not really.
Not really. What I was trying to get at is the fact that, I think a lot of people struggle with maintaining or finding the moment because they think of it as a singular thing, in that it is now's the moment. Oh, there it's gone. Versus now, instead of it just being one continual moment that is always starting and always ending, and it is this continual absorption of your senses and things going on around you that allow you to find that key moment. But what happens, like you were saying earlier,
But
Seb,
are you
when-
looking for key moments? Is that what you're thinking? Is that how you're framing this? Because I see the moment as just a slice of time-space. A second, we'll call it. A millisecond, whatever you want to think of as the moment. The moment is not the task. The moment is not the thing. The moment is the fish that is the millisecond that you're simply observing in the moment. And doesn't matter which way things go. Sometimes you've got zero control on the moment. It's your job to exist in the moment, observe it, and fluidize yourself in the moment. You can't shape up and down if you don't have the up and down lever. All you can do is keep up with the up and down. You interoperate with the moment rather than, none of us are the moment right now, even though we're existing in the same moment. Seb isn't working my brain. I'm not working Seb's brain. We're challenging each other's brain, but neither of us is controlling this moment other than for ourselves. But he can't control whether I leave the microphone or stay in front of the microphone. We're all sharing a moment that is fluidized, and it's our job to interact with the fluidized moment and turn it into good for us and those around us, or bad, and bad for all of those around us.
Interesting. I'm wondering then how how you guys have experienced this in terms of, like you said, Seb, in terms of training or future development, right? You have things that are going to happen in the future, or let me rephrase that, that you plan to have happen in the future, or that are circumstances that could come to fruition in the future. But if we're constantly only living in right now, in this moment, how do we plan? How do we train? How do we get ourselves better for the future? Seb?
Well, the reality is the best way to be prepared in the future is to prepare in the now. It's not to prepare, the event that you may encounter. So, for example, if we're to make an analogy with, say, the tactical world, yeah, we have to prepare for all these contingency, all the things that we might see eventually on a call. But we're not preparing for the call. We're preparing the skill set that transposes through time to the various calls that we'll see. So I never looked at it, yes, I did look at it and say, one day we may get X, Y, and Z on account of having some level of preparedness mentally or otherwise to some of the things that we may encounter. But my focus was, and this, let this be the mission statement, so to speak. But my focus was always on what I was doing now to make sure that I rose up to the occasion. Whereas seeing it differently, I'm preparing now, focused on the outcome later down the line. So at the end of the day, some of this might very well come across as semantics, and I'm not going to argue otherwise, because it actually can be, and it's a very philosophical conversation that we're having. But the goal is to be thought-provoking, right? And to have people form their own opinion of how they feel about time in their negotiation of it. But for me, everything we did was the mission statement. The time that we did it was the now.
I like that.
Yeah, and like any military organization, if you know what the mission set is tomorrow or the day after or whatever the case is, well, you start planning accordingly. But life doesn't get shifted to the future. Life gets shifted to the present. That's where you're operating in the now. And you can write the mission statement on the back of a matchbook, or it could be on 47 pages of both sides of a binder that gets handed to you, and prepare for that for tomorrow. There's lots of things that you can do to prepare for the future, in a sense of planning, in the sense of visualizing, in the sense of formulating. But you're not working in the future. You're working in the now, the moment that we're all sharing right now. And so time is ours to control in the now. We can't control it in the future. But to some degree, if we control our time well now, we are preparing ourselves for the future. And so I'm not living in the future, I'm living in the now with a preparedness for the future. Now, let's pretend for a moment World War VI is just about to roll over the horizon this afternoon, right after we're finished this podcast. So I'm ready for it. No big deal. I've been ready for it all my life. Once this podcast ends, I don't have to start planning for World War VI. It could go off right now and I'd be doing my thing. All of the things that I have understood throughout my whole life on how to manage the now. I don't have to live in the future scared of World War VI, because I'm prepared now. And I think that is how you control time, or at least your own time, is you shape it in the now, in anticipation, we'll call it, of possibilities in the future. And that's what makes you a more three-dimensional person. I think the more that you can become well-rounded, the less concern you have about the now.
Interesting.
Well, what do you think, Chance? What do you think? It is interesting.
It is interesting. This is where it kicked into my head, was when you were like preparing for World War VI, is that I personally spent a lot of time planning and prepping, and especially for the podcast, right? I'm constantly scheduling and trying to get things sorted out, and I'm consistently living in the future quite regularly, because I'm managing the show itself. But I still have to be able to separate from it and engage in my family or engage in jujitsu or engage in whatever I'm doing. So there's this constant like projection and then back to the present and then projecting forward. And
Oh
then back
no,
to the
I never
present.
think that way.
No?
Never. No. I'm living in the now all the time. All my planning is in the now all the time. I know exactly where my family is. I know where my dog is. I know all of the things in the now. From the now, I anticipate future actions and I set things in motion, but I don't live in the future. When I'm making my planning, I'm not 2 days from now living there. I'm hanging out with my family. I have a brain that can parallel process. And I'm not suggesting that I'm some sort of genius who can do 10 things all at once. Our lives aren't that complicated. Modern society has provided us with enough time to be able to manage these things. And so I don't have to live in the future. I can do everything from the now.
Interesting. Seb, thoughts?
Yeah, again, I think it's this is my opinion. I think it's mostly semantics, right? But it's an important nuance because it's a mindset. This is a mindset. This is the mindset piece, right? If you are saying I live in the now, I live in the future on account of the podcast or the task that I have to do, well, you're potentially projecting and not living in the now. Whereas if you change that slightly, it comes across as being only semantics, but it really isn't. Like you're refocusing your focus where your priority should be on account of the time that's coming next is not even guaranteed. But you are still investing enough of yourself in that process so that when the time comes, you are likely to be ready. But your prioritization of that time period is and should be your now. So that's kind of where the distinction occurs, right? And it's pretty, what's the word? Deep.
It is deep. It is really deep, and it's as deep as you want to make it. It's as deep as much as it is as deep as deeply as you want to think about what Seb just said. If you don't think about it deeply, then it's just semantics.
Yeah. This is the tough delineation too between semantics and nuance, right? Because a lot of it at the surface level could be semantics. So, oh well, you said this and I said this. We're coming to the
If
same
it's a
conclusion.
surface level
If
conversation.
It's a surface level conversation. But when you add the depth, when you are following the fish down to 130 feet, that's where you start to find the nuance and the small, really small variations and deviations between how you see the world versus how I see the world that allow us to have these conversations and develop our thoughts on it rather than just accept what I know as, or what I believe I know as the way, which is interesting. Now I have a question here. Any other thoughts before?
No,
jump
I'd just
on
like to say that that's our job over here is to push the pace on the conversation, push the pace deeper, push the pace in a direction that is probably the wrong direction so that it draws out more nuanced and interesting conversation. Takes us in a direction that maybe no one on the planet has ever talked about, as an example. And I'm not suggesting that that's what we're doing over here, but I'm okay with that. If we're entering into an area that no one has ever thought of or ever stated out publicly, where's the harm in that? Just as long as we're not being, we're not doing it for the wrong reasons. So if it's making you think in a new way, Chance, even if it's just a tiny way, yay, we just won.
Yes, we've won. Okay, everybody.
We
shut
won.
down. We're good.
Team win.
Seb, you got any thoughts on that before I jump on this question?
No, go ahead, man.
Okay. So, Gray Man Dad, Dre, good to see you. He says, my question is, how much time should we spend on preparation, whether it be for goals or building routine for consistency and discipline? What do you guys think? Sean?
How much time? All your time in the now. Prepare now. Start preparing now. And as you're preparing now, keep on preparing now, whatever that means to you. So let's pretend for a moment it's someone who doesn't know how to feed themselves. And if World War VI started, they'd have to learn a new skill called learning how to feed themselves. Start preparing now. And that doesn't require a whole pile of planning. You've just got to sit down for about 5 minutes and think, what do I need to learn if World War VI came across the horizon, as the example? Or let's forget about World War VI. We can do it really simple and sit down for 5 minutes with a pen and paper and write down your top 3 things that you need to do to improve your family life. Bam. Now you're busy for the rest of the day. Need to prepare for any goals. Goals are often set without much thought. They're usually panic goals in the sense of, my buddy at coffee challenged me today to find a goal. And on your drive back home, you grab a panic goal, and the panic goal has got no relevance to where you want to be 4 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And so goal setting is not just a knee-jerk reaction. A goal should take a little bit of time to consider what is worth your time. And then once you've found something that is worth your time, that goal will start illustrating what you need to do. And so I don't think that you have to spend a whole lot of time preparing for a goal. The goal will get you to where you need to be as long as you consistently produce against that goal over a timeline.
I like that. Seb, any thoughts on this?
Yeah. During the pandemic, if there was one thing that we were able to establish, and one of the positives was that we saw people go to work outside the work environment. And what we realized is that you can do it. It works. Organizations, even big organizations, did it, and it worked. And one of the key problem with having people working from home, as far as everybody was concerned, for many years before the pandemics, because it was suggested before, but everybody, needed the control over their employees, so to speak, to know exactly what their time was spent doing what. And I'm looking at this from a completely different lens, which is, what do they have to do? That's all I care about. I don't care how long it takes them to do it. If you're as an individual, go home with a certain work or task or workload, and you get it done in 2 hours and the other person gets it done in 12 hours, what is it to me? Why are we worrying about that? Is the work getting done, instead of trying to micromanage how long it takes? And I understand, people are paid by the hour and everything, but those are all things to consider, right? And so the answer to Gray Man's question, in my estimation, is that's an individual answer. You can't answer that. It depends what you need, when you need it, for how long. So for me, I would focus less on how much time do I need to allocate to this, and be more in the realm of what Sean's talking about, which is an intuitive relationship with the concept that you are trying to live by, or the goal that you're pursuing, or the business that you are building. Where are you at in terms of achieving the goal that you had set for yourself? Not how long do I need to work on this to see where. You see what the difference is? Again, yes, there is time involved in this, and at the end of it, you might be able to go back and trace it back and look at I spent 40 hours a week doing that. But it's irrelevant to set that as a goal. What if you didn't need 40 hours? Are you going to do it anyways? So the answer is, focus less on how much time you're spending doing things, making sure you're prioritizing the right things, and do it as long as it takes to be successful.
Yeah, and by the way, if it's for a goal, make it a worthy goal, not something to me, a goal is not something that you can do next week. That's not a goal. That's a minor blip on the radar. In fact, in my world, it's not even on the radar. A goal is something that should challenge you. You should be working towards a goal, half a year, 10-year project goal out. If you set a goal that is notable, that is something to drive towards, it should be reasonably big, and it should be a ways off in the future. And that ways off in the future, months, years, decades, it doesn't matter. What does matter, Gray Man, you already identified it, consistency and discipline. People will lose sight of consistently working towards their goal with a disciplined mindset, because consistency and discipline is not sexy. What is sexy is talking about the goal that never arrives, because the goal has never been well thought out, or was never that important enough to give you the conviction. You didn't have the passion or the conviction to execute against the consistency and discipline to get you towards that goal. So in my world, You've heard me say this before, Gray Man Dad. I said 10-year projects. This podcasting thing is a 10-year project. My passion, my conviction, my discipline, my focus, my consistency of effort, which you've seen. Those are the things that will get me towards my loosely framed goal of trying to help veterans, first responders, law enforcement to make their life better, whatever that means. I don't have a carved in stone, granular definition of what my goal is with this. I have a loose definition of me trying to do good in the world over a 10-year project. And through the things that I mentioned, consistency, discipline, conviction, all of that stuff, that'll get me to where I need to go. So how much time do I need to get there? I don't know. I'll give it the amount of time that it takes.
I like that. Seb, you got anything else before I push on another comment?
Yeah, I really like that concept of speaking to the goal or evoking the goal as you are pursuing the goal, and for this to give you the impression or the reward associated with accomplishing the goals, because those two things are completely different, but yet it does work in a weird way, in that you may stifle the accomplishment of said goal by enjoying the anticipatory reward associated with the goal accomplishment, if that makes any sense. So you have to be very careful with that, because there's nothing wrong with speaking to certain steps that you are taking in relation to a goal, but be very mindful and make sure to self-police if you start living the reward of the accomplishment of said goal right now as you are speaking about it, but it actually hasn't unfolded.
Yeah, agreed. But you know what? Here's a bit of good news for Gray Man Dad. So, and it's a perfect case study, what we're doing right in the now. Gray Man Dad asked a question. It was a more of a overarching theme question, a little bit of philosophy in there, perhaps, etc. And he knows us. He knows this panel well. He knows what we're all about, and he maybe anticipated an answer similar to what I gave or not. But the best news is this. It didn't get me any closer to my goal, per se. Me, personally, Sean, didn't get me any closer to my goal. But I got a tiny, really tiny micro win out of it. Because Gray Man Dad knows what's up. He's been in the game long enough. We've been over here 8 months doing this. He knows the rhythm. He knows what we're all about. And his question was specific to people that he knows with a answer that he kind of expected. So nothing has changed other than, for me, the mini micro win is this. I'm now at a point for myself in this journey called a 10-year project on the collective that people now know the process. They now know the path forward. They now know how I'm going to answer this question to some degree. And so that's good, because that is a community starting to understand itself. That is a community starting to bond. That is a community starting to grow in its understanding of these broader, deeper, philosophical, maybe wisdom-based questions. So I'm not that much closer to my 10-year project, but I got a tiny little micro win today. And maybe that's all we need along the journey of the long journey.
It's interesting, while you guys have been chatting, I've been thinking about this. The concept of preparation in and of itself it's future-based to begin with, right? If I'm preparing for something, it's because it's in the future, I see it going to happen, or I expect it to happen, and therefore I want to prepare for it. But I was wondering if perhaps if we put a little spin on it, change the verbiage to kind of engage people differently. What if we use the term investment in the future, or investment? You're investing your moment right now. I'm investing this moment in order to better prepare for the future. And I just playing with that in my own head seems to have opened up a new realm for it, in that it's no longer I have to do X, Y, and Z in order for A, B, and C to take place. Now I have to invest into A, B, and C now, so that when it happens, I'm ready. Seb, what do you think? I saw you nodding your head.
I was thinking something completely unrelated. No, just kidding.
What are you eating? What's for dinner?
No, I agree, and I think this piggybacks greatly on the point that Sean just made about micro wins, and we've spoken about micro wins a lot, before, and I do believe in them. I take them everywhere I can, and I like that, and I do believe that changing the way you frame it does exactly that. It provides you with the right mindset in that continuation of whatever it is that you are doing that may or may not have an impact later, because you don't even know if you'll be there later, right? So this is one part where we as humanity, and the only species really that has the ability to foresee the future. Like, we don't, but we can anticipate that we'll be there, whereas most animal beings are living in the moment. And so, how do we, and we have to, and that's at the end of the day, we have to have the ability to navigate the future. We don't really have a choice on account of the way that society is framed, that we are framed to function with each other. But that little nuance in the mindset and how you just reframed it makes it that every time you're investing, you're not doing something that will eventually yield results. You are reaping results in the now of what potentially might happen later if you're lucky enough to be there.
I like that a lot. Sean, what do you think?
Yeah, I said it in my live IG chat this morning, which went on for quite a time, I might add. Holy moly.
Like 3.5 hours.
Dude, it was like, I think it was 2.5 hours. It was
Talking
it's
about time.
redonkulous. Yeah. But you know why I gave that time? Why I gave that time to podcasting was I was enjoying myself because people who were hanging out were cool. And so I was having a bit of fun. It wasn't a one-way highway. It was a two-way highway. So that was really good. And I was going to go on at 10:30 in the morning anyway. And then I wasn't sure what time the collective was going to be kicking off. So I just kept on rolling. People kept asking questions, kept interacting, et cetera, et cetera. Long story short, I then ended up interacting with Gray Man Project. Brady, he gave me a, hey, can request to join the live. Okay, we jump into a live and we're chirping, having a good laugh. We're talking about things. And then another guy requested to join, call sign redacted on Instagram. Didn't know him. And as he was requesting, Brady bounced out. Now I've got a guy that I don't know. He's a super cool guy. He wants to join. Now we're like, hey, how are you? Hey, how are you? Who are you? And so we're having a little, very nice moment, etc. And at some point I said in the conversation with him, which went on for, 10, 15 minutes, I said, one of the things that we're trying to do over on the collective, where I'd like you to join us sometime in the future. Weird word. I said, hey, what we're trying to do, or at least what I'm trying to do nowadays, is write a living book. Like, as we're in the conversation, I'm trying to write a book every day. Not a book that'll ever be published, but a book that will be listened to in the future. So in the now, I am writing the future. And maybe it'll only be one half crazy dude 500 years from now who bumps into this podcast and listens to it and thinks, wow, I'm glad we evolved some more. But in the future, people will listen to this. So in the now, we are literally creating a future us that we are completely unaware of, who will be listening to us. And so once I started framing the collective as such, my relationship with the collective changed yet again. It changed it from, I'm going to do my best in the now, to I'm doing my best in the now and for the future. So I really take my job seriously over here nowadays. I'm trying to create something that is worthwhile for others.
Indeed. Zeb, you got any points on that, or are you good? Okay.
Boys, come on.
You hit me
Come
with mic
on.
drops, like just left, right, and center on time.
No, I
man.
don't. Come on.
It's like you've been thinking about this for a while.
I haven't, but I'm all sweaty in my BJJ rash guard still, so maybe that's impacting me.
Could be. The fumes are affecting you now.
It is. It's a little thick in here.
Tanya asks, and this is a great question, isn't this part of the human condition? You build for the future, but you are mentally present in the now. You envision the end goal, but you need to be focused to what's at hand. And she says, if I understand correctly, the action done now is the preparation for the future, which I think is a very astute point. Any thoughts on that?
It is, and I'm good with it, except taking us back to where this kind of kicked off, which was my first concern when the word moment was used, looking, trying to figure out what the next moment is. Well, the moment is now. We've already established that. But come on, there's how many veterans do I know personally who are living in the past? Never mind, can't live in the now. And let's pretend if they could move into the now. Well, their default position as they slip into the now is to exist there for about 4.5 seconds until they're projecting into the future and thinking about what they're going to do in the future to change their ways. But the now doesn't get changed. Now they're living in the future about when they've thrown the furthest javelin across Canada and they've never picked up a javelin. And so you can quickly go from the past to the now for half a second, straight into planning and living in the future like you are now an Olympian, and you're still not off the couch.
Seb, you got any thoughts?
So you're essentially living in the only part of your life that isn't real.
Yeah, it's true.
Right?
It's true.
That's interesting. The Tanya, that's to you. Make sure that you're not living in the past completely and not in the future. No, she's great at that and maintaining a very good sense of what is happening right now, especially in my life. She's very good at that. She's been helping me out quite a bit. We got another comment, Larry Sutherland. Good to see you, Larry. He says, conversations where everyone agrees and has the same experience doesn't stir emotion nor cause deep brainstorming. That comes from being challenged. 100%. And I really like this comment because it is 100% true in this moment and everything that we do on the collective. That's the design, is to get people to think, as we mentioned earlier. You guys got any thoughts on that?
I do. I want to add this. This is for the general public who aren't aware of this, who have never been on the collective as a guest and have sat in the green room. I think I said it yesterday. Sometimes my job over here, in my mind anyway, because I don't have a job description, is just to stir the pot. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll be saying things that I don't fully agree with myself, just to move the needle, just to get things going in a vector that I've never seen or heard before, because I know that the guests can do some heavy lifting, the heavy lifting that I can't in the moment. So I'll set the compass bearing so that we're like 37 degrees off track, just so we get lost in the bush a little bit and figure out what's going on there and then get back onto the track again. I like doing it, man, because if I needed an echo chamber, I can find those everywhere. But that's why I like the collective, is because we push back a little bit, not in an ignorant way, but we move each other around to some degree, and I like it.
Yeah. Seb, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the evolution of a conversation, we're having a basic conversation, probably a conversation I've had a million times, but every time I have a conversation on the collective, at the end of that conversation, I have changed some of the lenses or some of the ways that I view things on account of my own evolution within the context of the conversation. And that's precisely what this is.
Oh, there you go.
That's what it has done. Exactly.
That is what it has done in this moment.
Precisely that.
So,
and just to while Seb is all locked up there, I'll keep him rolling. Seb and I talked for a couple hours this morning on a Zoom meeting, and we were talking about when we first got together to maybe write a book. That was the initial plan. We record 25 hours of audio, 2 recordings per day for 7 days here in my little town. And at the end of it, we could have had a book. But what it did do was it formed a great relationship, a strong relationship for me with another intellectual individual who is a high performer and that I respect. And so that book didn't happen. But as Seb and I talked about it this morning, that's a long time ago now, it seems. But when we were talking about it, we both kind of laughed and agreed that that book got us going. But man, like just even half a year later, we were 2 completely different guys. Because we are now investing heavily in pushing the pace on our personal evolution. And Chance, I think you'll agree. I know I can speak for myself anyway. Like today, this Sean Generation 2.0 versus Generation 1.0 on January 1st of this year when we kicked off the collective, I'm a different person, man. And it cannot be helped because even if I was trying to resist it, I don't know how we're over 200 guests. We got to be over 200 guests by now. And I mean, some of these guests are like, I mean, sometimes I'm embarrassed to show up in front of the microphone, like looking over my shoulder with massive, why am I here? I don't belong here. Imposter syndrome, which I've
syndrome
suffered
like
all
that.
my life.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but it's such a privilege to be over here with the talent that shows up on the regular. So, yeah, Generation 2.0 is a thing.
Absolutely. And it's funny because we've been, if you think about actual versions in terms of computer versions, it's never just 2.0 or 3.0.
Yeah, that's right. Oh,
It's
for sure.
1.1.0, all
for
those
sure.
things, right? And
Bravo.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have another change the next day, and then another change the next day, and every time it's evolving. And yeah, we may be at, version 275 right now. Who knows? But it's been quite the evolution. I got a couple comments here I want to hit on them,
Sure,
and then
shoot.
I think I got to shut down because I'm getting
Sounds good.
I'm getting looks. So
That sounds good.
Winter Storm jumps in. He says, "I come in late, and Sean is talking about 500 years in the future. That'll teach me to be late to class." That's a good one. Salty jumps in. He says, "As you invest in your future in the current moment, leaving the past where it has to be, you pick the you want to evolve into. It's based on the moment and who and how you interact with the world around you. How do you best base a lot of your
Invest,
time to reach
probably.
invest, there you go. How do you invest a lot of your time to reach that version of you?" That's a good question. What do you think?
Well, I think that Salty Jinx is doing it. I mean, I see him do it on a regular basis, and he might not be doing it at a velocity that he's pleased with. Maybe he wants to increase his velocity. Maybe he wants to pick up his tempo. I don't know, but from an outside observer's perspective, Salty Jinx is in the game. He knows the deal. He could have sat in and done this podcast instead of me, so he knows what's up.
Absolutely. I'm going to smash these real quick.
Smash.
And then, I got to get going. So Greyman Dad
Bounce.
says, "As I continue to grow and learn with the collective, I currently use the method which Sean and Seb have shared. However, old habits of goal planning and preparation is working backwards," which is a good way to do it. Figure
It
something
is.
out and then
But
work
set a goal
backwards.
and work forward.
Yeah, exactly. Chris K says, "Imagine the collective needed to be sure how to podcast first, taking a few years of courses and training. Instead, it's further ahead just by doing every day. Anything is better than nothing." Sean Taylor.
That is true. Anything is better than nothing.
Greyman Dad, starting at the end and working my way back as I learn more about things like MET-TC. I try to find ways to find similarities to the goals in my life. Yeah. And then to the last one, Tanya says, "Chris K, that's a trap I fell into, placing inappropriate emphasis on needing it to be perfect before I start. The action I do now is how to get proficiency, not the reverse," which I think is awesome.
Gold
And,
star.
Yeah, I don't have time for final thoughts, so we're just going to have to jump right out.
Sounds
And,
good, buddy. Seb's
great
just jumping
time.
right in.
Yeah,
let
Seb's
let
just
that
jumping
guy
right
in
in.
so that we can bounce
There
him
we go.
out.
So now we're going to take off. I don't really have time for final thoughts. We got to just run.
You
but,
jumped in, and Chance Bros got kicked out.
Yeah,
Sounds
here we
good.
go. So
Buddy.
don't forget, learn, build, grow. And we'll see you tomorrow on The Collective. Chimo.
Chimo.
See you guys.